Hello everybody and welcome to our webcast Microsoft Defender Unified Portal. Empower your SOC. Today, I, Fabian, cybersecurity architect at Klukanja, and my colleague.
Yeah, my name is Thomas Naunheim. I'm a cybersecurity architect at Klukanja and very excited to be here with Fabian and talking about Defender XDR.
Yeah, we want to dive deeper in the whole unified story of the Defender portal today. So let's get started.
So Fabian, when we are talking about Defender and Microsoft Security in general, there are a couple of acronyms out there, right?
That's true.
Maybe the most people have heard about SIEM, about EDR, and so on. So what it means, this XDR, XSPM, SOAR, and what the 3 or 4 layers acronym here?
Yeah, I think endpoint detection and response, EDR, everybody has heard that. That's basically what is the industry name of Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. But with XDR, we now have something new, and it combines a lot of the different acronyms that we see on the screen into one product, and it's called Extended Detection and Response. So let's dive a bit deeper on the next slide and looking into which Microsoft products we are actually talking about if we are talking about XDR. And that's basically, Thomas, we have, as you can see, a lot of products here. We're starting on the left hand with Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, but we're also talking about Microsoft Defender for Office. And of course, we also have Defender for Cloud, we have Defender for Mobile, Defender for Cloud Apps, and other things like the data loss protection and even Entra ID protection are considered parts of the Defender XDR suite. So it's not just one product, but it's basically a product suite that helps us protect your environment.
All right, so I think most of us are already familiar with some products. So for example, if you're an identity admin, you heard about identity protection, now called Entra ID protection. And but there's an overall picture, right? And so how it fits together in a Microsoft security environment.
Yeah, as we can see on this slide, XDR is just one slice of the whole security ecosystem Microsoft has built over the years. We have Defender for Cloud that goes into multi-cloud environments like AWS and GCP, and of course Azure as well. But we also cover things like the on-premises environments that still are existing out there. So for that we have Azure Arc and of course the Defender platform with Defender for Endpoint P2. And if we now dive deeper, there is a lot of other things as well. So Thomas, when we're talking about Sentinel, where would that fit into the picture?
So Sentinel, and I think most of you are like we, spend a lot of time in Sentinel, and Sentinel was the right place for the integration as a SIEM. And if we have a look here, there's a lot of integration, especially when we are talking about third-party products. So you have a firewall system, you have also Windows servers and Linux servers, and you like to ingest the raw data. There has been some capabilities to bring this raw logs to the SIEM, as we can see here, to have the integration to Sentinel. But on the other side, we had some more capabilities here. Because with Sentinel, we have also the integration to get incidents from the Defender XDR environment. So there has been an integration. And as we can see on the top, there has been a couple of other integrations. For example, when we're talking about protecting cloud workloads, we know that organization has adopted the DevOps approach. So we're talking about protecting GitHub, Azure DevOps, or even also third-party DevOps platforms. And also having a visibility from the external view, like the external attack surface management, or something called exposure management, what we can see later also in our demo. But overall, when we take a view on this, there has been a little bit broken experience, right? So if you started to use Sentinel and Defender, there has been some challenges in the past, right, Fabian?
Definitely. I think this shows especially when we are looking into the actual portals itself. So for Sentinel and XDR, we had a synchronization between incidents, but you still had those different experiences. You had the Defender XDR portal, and you had the Azure portal with the Microsoft Sentinel inside. And if you wanted to switch from an incident from Sentinel to XDR, you had to switch those portals. This was always a bit of a break in experience, even if comments or such are synchronized between the two. And this is especially where the unified Defender portal experience changes a lot. Because as we can see on the next slide, now we have a combined experience. We have a lot of the features that we already know from Defender XDR and expand them to Sentinel. And Thomas, I think it's not only that, we are expanding even more.
Yeah, right. So I think that's a big point that we need to underline, this experience. So if you are more the SIEM guy and you have worked in Sentinel to get the logs from the firewall and so on, and you are more the endpoint guy, now we are back working together in one portal, and that brings a lot of benefits. And today we like to go into details about the benefits of this integration. And I think we have a couple of things to discuss, starting from how we can take benefit on correlated incidents, but also how we can hunt across the SIEM and the XDR data. So it feels really that we have now a unified investigation experience. And also with the feature, as I named, exposure management, we have some benefits when it comes to breach insights. And last but not least, it's all about AI. So we have also to talk about how we can take benefit about Security Copilot and optimize our SIEM with some new features that's also available in the Defender XDR portal.
Okay, then let's dive into this. You mentioned a few things in here that maybe not everybody is yet really accustomed to. So you mentioned correlation. Let's have a look at that. And correlation is really helping you in your actual analyst flow. So if we detect an incident, we have an alert, something like that, and your analyst must act on that, this feature brings you a lot of benefits. And we already had this in XDR, but now it gets supercharged with Sentinel integration. To get a bit more into the details about that, so far we had the data source, something like a log source or something that came from a third party or a first party vendor. And then we had a detection. And this detection basically said, if something is happening and we have certain thresholds, then raise an alert. And as soon as this alert is created, we also have entities that are accompanying this alert. This could be a user, in this example, user A. We have a computer that is DC1, and we have an IP address. All of those entities are now related to this alert. And from this alert, we now create an incident. And this is something that Microsoft Defender XDR had from the beginning. So we always had an alert and an incident. And the benefit about this approach and the correlation engine we will see in a moment, because this is just one alert and one incident. But what happens if we get another alert? In this case, we now generate a second alert based on the same data source, and this also has entities attached to it. In this case, it's a different server, it's backup 01, but we also have the same user, user A. And what now correlation engine does in the background is combining those two alerts into a single incident, giving us an attack view and an attack map that includes all the necessary entities and alerts within one incident, making it so much easier for your analysts to grasp what is happening at the moment without losing focus of what is in the details, what is in the alerts. So this actually, Thomas, helps us immensely in the day-to-day operations because it reduces the number of single alerts that we have to look at because they are combined into incidents that are much more actionable than a single incident without losing any relation in between.
And it works really on a way to make context between alerts, right? And tell us a story about the attack, for example.
That's completely right.
Cool.
And now we get this integration with Sentinel alerts as well. So since we now have the whole integration, the Sentinel alerts inside of XDR, we get this correlation engine as well for those alerts.
Nice. All right.
So let's have a look at the next thing, and that is basically how does that look in the real world?
Yeah.
Cool. That was a nice slide, but demos are always nice. Let's switch over there. You can see here we have a nice alert, a nice incident with a lot of different alerts. And in here you can see we have something like activity from a Tor IP address. We have access to SAP systems, and all those are single alerts. And if you analysts would look at each and one of those alerts, they might miss the whole picture. And the whole picture is already painted here on the right-hand side. We can see a lot of different entities here. We have something like a user entity over here, and this user entity is connected to IP addresses. Microsoft 365 applications, we have SAP in here. So you can see this is a lot of different ways how they are connected. And all of those entities are somehow related to different alerts on the left-hand side here. So if we hover over a single alert, you can see that it always highlights also the entities that are part of this alert. And if we click on one of these alerts, we get the flyout on the right-hand side, and it will tell you a bit more about what is actually happening here.
Yeah, but the big question here is, we have now this correlation engine, which is doing all the magic here, right?
Yes.
But what are the pattern, the condition, the magic, how it works that we get this correlated view? And is there a way for transparency to the security analyst to understand why Defender XDR has merged and correlated the incident?
That's an excellent question because, of course, Defender XDR somehow matches all those pieces together, and in most cases it's right, but sometimes, of course, it might not get it at the first glimpse. But that's not a problem because in each alert we also have the information right there. So we not only have alert information about what was actually happening in this alert, but we also have information about the correlation type and why it was correlated. So in this case, it was the same user credentials and the content similarity to a certain email address in here that also correlates to, in this case, a mailbox, another UPN in the system. So each of those alerts has this explanation for you. And if you like, you can even remove a certain alert from an incident if you decide this is not really related to it. And in the end, this helps the correlation engine in the future to make better decisions for you.
Cool. That's good to hear. So it really links the entities and the story and brings it together. That's nice to see.
Yes, definitely. And I think something like this, where we now have cloud incident alerts and SAP alerts, so we even have like completely different vendors combined into one. This gives you a lot of power. And this power also translates not only to the initial we can see it better as analysts, but also to Microsoft can act on it. So there is a feature called automatic attack disruption. And Thomas, I think you have something prepared for us here.
Yeah, so what we can see is that Microsoft invests heavily in the attack disruption, and also like common attack scenarios like the attack on the middle scenarios are one of those supported scenarios where Microsoft has a high confidence that this is a real attack and we need to have a stop for the attack. So they're starting, for example, to disabling a user when we get some confidence that this is an ongoing attack, for example, AITM attack. But I'm in love and particularly interested in everything related to workload identities, and we see a lot of attention by attackers to abuse non-human identities. And what is really nice to see that we have also this scenario here in place. So Microsoft has also worked on attack disruption for applications. And we got here once again a complex incident starting with compromised user accounts. And the compromised user was in a position to register a malicious OAuth application. And we get a lot of details here. But in the end of the day, it was also the detection that this is an ongoing attack. So this application will be abused, for example, to have a persistence in the environment. And the result of this one is that also the applications has been disabled. So it's not only about that the actor, the compromised identity will be contained, like disabling account, revoke the tokens, and so on. It's also about the application that has been abused as part of this multi-stage attack. And the attacker is not in the position to use this application for persistence. And even if their compromised account is no longer under control of the attacker, there's also a stop by this identity switch to the compromised application. And I think that's a great example how the correlation and also advanced scenarios will be supported to stop the attacker, and that very close by, so that we are just in time to avoid any further damage by this attack.
So this basically means something that we didn't have before. We could isolate a single user and had to look for any persistence. This is now integrated in the automatic attack disruption, right, because those credentials that were added, they were just disabled. The attacker cannot use it anymore. Of course, this also means I can't use the application, but I guess in the case of being compromised, there's always this balance between interrupting something or interrupting the attacker, and I think we all can agree interrupting the attacker is definitely very important.
Yeah. So I think there's really nice features here, and also having the signals from the different sources. And as we have seen in your incident, there's no boundary, there's no border between SIEM and XDR. It really comes in a unified view, and it feels really like a platform that works together with the different products, right?
Yes. And I think having this correlated view on incidents, alerts, and the attack disruption is just the beginning, because now we have all these signals inside of the Defender XDR portal. But this is, of course, not limited to just the alerts and incidents as before. There's more to it.
Right.
And this brings us to the seamless threat detection across these data pods. So previously, we always had this separation. We had a Sentinel log analytics where we could search for firewall logs and such. But then we had to switch over to Defender XDR and look at the data that was in there. That would be the Defender for endpoint data or Defender for identity information, and use KQL to query those. And yes, you were able to stream some of those logs into the Sentinel, but this was at a very high cost. Yes. And I think everybody who has a bit more than 100 clients will say to you that was not just a bit costly, this was really pricey. And this is a real game changer. I think when we first saw this in the preview, it was wow, mind-boggling. We can do this now from a single portal without having to ingest anything anywhere else. At least for me, it was really cool to see.
Definitely.
So let's have a look at that.
There's no slides.
There's no slides.
Let's dive into it. And I think this is something you must see in the portal, and it's quite impressive. Let's start with this view, right?
Yes, so in here we can see we are in the advanced hunting view. And the advanced hunting view, like you knew it before, is a bit on steroids in here. So on the left-hand side, we have a lot of different tables in here. Those are all tables you already know. There's like alert evidence, there is behavior information, there's sign-in information from Entra ID, there's Graph API logs. All that is in here. And this you already knew. But if we scroll down, and you can see by the length of this list, there is a lot more now. And basically what we get in here now is really information that was previously only available in Sentinel. Meaning we can now query from the Defender XDR portal data that is available only in Sentinel and data that is in XDR. And to make it even more great, we can combine this data now in a single query. Let's have a look at that.
So I have prepared something for that, right? Perfect. So when we're talking about combining those data sources, I have here an example. So I said Sentinel was our place to have raw data, right? And when we're talking about Microsoft Entra sign-in logs, the sign-in logs by the diagnostic logs are the most rich full logs that we can have in for Microsoft Entra in a SIEM environment. And now we have this sign-in logs looking for a specific kind of sign-in like the Windows sign-in. And now we can just use a join statement. And by using the join statement, we correlate the Entra ID sign-in event that is available by the sign-in to a Windows client with the device logon events table. And device logon events table was one of the XDR advanced hunting tables, which was previously very costly to have in Sentinel in place. And the result in this one is we have here a unified view about the local logon event. And for example, combining if there was an Entra ID protection risk and also that my token has been expired. Okay.
That's live demos for you.
That's live demos. We have forgotten to pray to the demo gods, right? And we can see there was no identity protection risk level. We can also see, for example, a machine group is the client assigned to a specific device group in MDE. So a lot of things that we can correlate. And you don't see any difference. Is it a Sentinel or XDR table? It just works and behaves like any other table, right?
Yes. And I think one thing to point out, on the top here, we also have this select workspace ID. This means you not only can have one Sentinel connected, you can have multiple Sentinels connected. There's always one primary. This is the one that synchronizes alerts and the whole XDR part into it as well. And then you can have secondaries, a lot of those. And in here, in the advanced hunting, you can query all of them by just selecting the different workspaces, which makes it super flexible without the need to, again, go to a different portal. And of course, this is like hunting. We are looking for certain data in the haystack. But if we find something, we might want to create a detection out of it. And I think this is where this is really getting strong now, because we not only have unified hunting, we also have unified detections. And let's switch over in the tab in the other pre-prepared something here, and I have to switch over. And as you can see, there's like a super long query that we have in here. I won't go into too much detail, but in here we basically combine information from different sources, Sentinel as well as XDR, and we can now create a detection rule. This is not that different from what you've known before, but the major difference is, and we now have this nice big banner here, it changes completely how you can create those rules. Because it's no longer about creating an analytic rule or a custom detection, but it's a unified custom detection that lives and breathes inside of the XDR portal, but has a lot of the features that you have known from Sentinel. So we can have in here like the web shell detection. We have some nice description. And then we also have the query in here. We can tell it how often it should run. And now you can see this already is different from what you had before. Like every hour, 3 hours, that is something you are known from the Defender XDR portal. But custom, that was not available before. And now you can say it should run like every 20 minutes. This brings down your mean time to detection and helps you to have a very flexible detection logic that you need. Of course, we can select something like a severity, the category. This is all already known to you from the old portal. But if we switch over in the alert settings, now you see there's a lot of different alert settings. You can now have variables in the alert title. So again, we can say web shell was detected. And in the text, we could also include some information about the host name in here. And here we can use then within the curly brackets different variables from the original one, like you've used it in Sentinel already. You can include something like custom details, a feature also available only in Sentinel before, and you have a lot more flexibility in the entity mappings, but you now get pre-populated fields in here. So this is also a benefit from before where you had to do this manually. You now get some samples and recommendations. Of course, not all of those are exactly what you want, but you can change this how you like it and just remove the entities that you don't want in here. So in my case, I don't want to have any mailbox, but I want to have the user. I want to have the IP addresses in here. And let's say I'm good with that. Now I have automated actions, something that was not available for Sentinel analytic rules before. And I now could do something like isolate the device immediately. So you can see that now the whole experience of unified detections comes together in the XDR portal, but combines Sentinel data, combines XDR data, and features that you previously only had in Sentinel are now available in Defender XDR as well. So super helpful feature, and I think we will see a lot of more improvements over the coming months. But now let's dive into other topics as well.
Yeah. So I think what you have shown before is really gold for detection engineers and for people that have seen some limitations in the custom detections over the analytic rules in the past. But let's talk about one of my favorite features when we're talking about pre-breach and post-breach cybersecurity. So what we can see is there should be more invest in avoiding attacks and having a good security posture, right? And Microsoft has done a great job, in my opinion, to bring exposure management to the table. But what is exposure management and how it plays a role in all the acronym game that we played at the beginning of this talk? So in the past, or nowadays, we still have the XDR SIEM term, and we have heard that this notion, and I think those both worlds comes together with the Defender XDR Portal. But on the other side, we have a word called, or the notion called XSPM, and that has something to do with unified exposure management. On the left side, when we're talking about SIEM and XDR, it's all about detecting and response to an incident, to a threat. But on the other side, we should also work heavily on the detection to find our critical assets, to identify what are our assets that should be protected or are currently not protected in the environment. And I think that's really important because there's one good quote that said, you can only protect what you are aware of, that it exists, for example, in your environment.
So the unified exposure management basically gives you the capability to actually prioritize which are the most critical systems, not by a TVM perspective, but what is the actual criticality then?
Yeah, so let's have a closer look to that one. And I think it's very important to underline because we like to highlight the full integration with the Defender XDR portal. And I think with those both categories that come together, we get a holistic view not only about incidents when something happened, for example, by attacker activity, it's also about the pre-breach scenario. And you are asking an excellent question, how it works or what are the aspects. So first of all, we have a couple of data connectors or a couple of data sources. And it's not only about the Microsoft environment. I think especially if you're living in a multi-cloud environment, or maybe you have some third-party security tools in place, there will be connections and integrations to the exposure management that are the data sources. And what exposure management offers is a graph-based view on the relations between your assets and the environment. And I think it's very important. It's not only about the relation to each other, also about specific criticality. Criticality could be, for example, it is a sensitive asset, has high privilege, role assignments, or it could have sensitive data stored, but it could be also that we have some high vulnerabilities, like an endpoint that is finds a lot of love when it comes to patching a Windows device and so on. And at the end of the day, with all the graph-based view, we get a lot of benefits because it helps us to understand potential attack paths. It helps us to get a unified exposure insights because you maybe like to start reducing vulnerabilities on your assets that have, for example, high sensitive data stored or high privilege assignments. And I think there's this famous quote about attackers, things, and graph. I think everybody in the security space is aware of that. And now we get this graph view, not only about lists like a TVM tool showing this patch are missing on the device. It really tell you the context about, hey, if you're doing a bad job on this device, and that is the device that is using by the global admin and has also permissions in Azure to a sensitive blob storage, that would be a bad story if there's an attacker that can abuse, for example, this unpatched device.
So this means like even features that were previously only in the Defender for cloud space are now moving into XDR. Right. And getting even better because we have more data and more data points that we can actually use for that.
Right. So maybe you already have seen the attack paths and the Security Explorer in Defender for Cloud. Now, this is not only limited to your cloud assets, it also includes your endpoints, also include data from Microsoft Entra, and even also from third-party data sources. And that is a really powerful tool.
Wow, that's good.
Should we have a look into it?
Of course.
Of course. So let's see. We are here in a demo environment. And first of all, you like to see how the attack path has developed over time. So do you have an increased number? Did you get a great job? And there's lower numbers of attacks.
But this does not mean that this is attacks as an incident.
No.
Those attack paths, what are they referring to?
So let's have an example. If you go here to attack paths, you can see a story. And at least there's a connection between two entities that tells you the story. What could be a potential way that the attacker is using to start compromise, for example, an entity. In this case, for example, we have a device. Device has a high number of and high severity of vulnerabilities. And if they are able to compromise the device, they have a direct lateral movement path to, for example, an Azure Key Vault, obviously, storing sensitive keys or certificates. So it really links multiple scenarios together and showing you not only the relation, it gives you also some stories about what is the entry point and what could be the potential target type. And by this list, you can also browse so that you can say, I'm also like to see inactive attack paths. So if we can see from the telemetry, there's no ongoing activity, also attack paths become inactive. And you can also start, once again, to filter for a specific risk level, because maybe you are overwhelmed with the numbers of attack paths and you like to start at a special point.
Yeah, that's like, how would you start? So I have a lot of those attack paths, and I can see here this number is going up every day. What would be the best way to look at the most impactful entities that help me to reduce those attack paths?
That's an excellent question, and I guess when we take a look on this one, and also this overview can be a little bit overwhelmed if you're starting to use it. There's this area called top 5 choke points. And that's showing you entities that are part of a high number of attack paths. And if I'm able to reduce, for example, the risk or the vulnerability on this asset, I will also mitigate a number of attack paths. Let's have an example. This is a server, and it's one of the top scorer because it's included in up to 6 attack paths. And if I go to a few blast radius, I'm here in the attack surface map. And one of the cool things that I can use here in this attack surface map is I can see the relation. So the server with my vulnerability, and it is a critical asset, has relation because it can authenticate as this managed identity. And this managed identity has permission to blob storage and to hear something like, what is it, a key vault, right? And if we go here and extract the view from the blob storage, I can see there's a couple of blob storage where I have access by impersonating the managed identity. And once again, this blob storage, for example, hosts some kind of containers, and I can really drill down, see other relations, who has access to the blob storage, what are other managed identities that come into play. So it is really a graph-based or graph-centric orientated investigation, and it really helps you to browse to your entire environment. And that's, I think, a completely new level how we can do and investigate our security posture.
So in this case, by just patching this one system, I would immediately cut off attack paths,
right,
because I'm no longer vulnerable to current vulnerabilities, and those attack paths are not as easy for an attacker to abuse in the future.
Right, and also to see blast radios, maybe are there other assets that have similar permissions, and are they maybe also unpatched or in a vulnerable state? So that gives me a little bit more context-based view. But we have seen there's this crone on some assets. So the big question is, what is a high critical asset? And what is one of the nice features, and I think something that everybody should be aware, is the critical asset management. The critical asset management is available here in the Defender XDR settings. And if we are here in the critical asset management environment, we can see there's a lot of predefined classifications by Microsoft. So Microsoft is scanning your environment for assets that could be, for example, identities with privileged roles in Azure. That could be your global reader user accounts or other entities. And they will be automatically applied to the classification. But not only about what Microsoft thinks is critical, you can also build your very own classification based on what are the tags in Azure, what are maybe machine groups of devices, and you can define your own criticality level, and that helps you to classify your assets And as someone that is interested to protect privileged assets, this is for me one of the absolutely killer features.
So this gives like companies the ability to define criticality not only on a level Microsoft has defined, but define something on their own because it's critical for their environment, for their systems, or for their business success in the end.
Yeah, right. So for example, if you take a blob storage, there's a purview integration and you can identify, for example, sensitive data because of a purview classification. But you have always this one custom enterprise application, and there's no logic or automation. Even with AI, it's hard to identify those ones. And you like to have a manual tagging of those assets. And there's where the custom classification helps a lot to bring your criticality level to the game.
Very powerful.
Yeah, but what about optimization? Because
what about it, Thomas?
Yeah, good question.
I think yes. Let's talk a bit about the whole AI. I think it's one of the buzzwords over the last three years, and it's not only a buzzword anymore. There is something behind it now, and of course, cost. So we already have seen that we can reduce costs by not ingesting data into Sentinel, but still being able to use it in a meaningful way together with Defender XDR data. But with a new view, this does not stop there. There's even more that Microsoft gives out as tools to actually use this cost optimization features and AI features.
Yeah, right. Because what we can see in many discussions also with our customers is really the question, okay, I not only like to ingest data, the data that I'm ingesting to SIEM should be really used by, for example, detections or fronting, or maybe I have also some compliance topics. And the SOC optimization is fully integrated to the XDR portal, and that shows you if you have some white spots, right? For example, if there's missing analytic rules for some of the standard data sources. But in addition, and I think that's a really good story, it shows you also in a particular matter if you have a low usage of a table. So there's always this one data source that will be ingested to Sentinel since years, and nobody is interested. And there's no love from the detection engineers to take benefit on this data. And here's a good example from my environment. I did some data ingestion of GitHub Enterprise, but there's no single analytic rule that takes benefit on this data source. So that's really sad.
So this gives us an actual overview over which tables are utilized in a meaningful way through custom detection analytic rules. And I don't have to hunt through all my detections myself and identify what is interesting. And it even shows me the impact, as I can see here. Okay, this is half a gigabyte of data, not that much, but still something that I could reduce if I don't need it anymore.
Yeah, right. And we have some other ways to store the data. So, for example, if you like to have the GitHub data just for auditing reasons, there's one time in 10 years you like to get the data. Maybe it is a better option to move it from the analytic tier to some other data tier that we have in Sentinel. But there's one more challenges that we can see. And especially when we take a look here in the sign-in logs. And I think this discussion is also a really real-world story, I can say that, is about the sign-in logs. So, of course, sign-in logs will be used. And but you can see here, and this recommendation or in this finding, that a lot of data has been counted because of the field conditional access policy of this column. So Fabian, what is the reason when this becoming so expensive from a cost perspective?
That's always the customer that asks for more than 192 conditional access policies. But kidding aside, with each conditional access policy that we have in an environment, there is something locked for this. Even if it's disabled, even if it's report only, in each entry on the sign-in logs, this will be part of the data set. Meaning we have additional data that is ingested for each sign-in. And if we take non-interactive sign-ins into account, that is a lot of different sign-ins. And I think For sign-in logs, it's a very, very important one. For non-interactive, it really depends on how did you use it. And of course, a suggestion like this is just a suggestion. You still should look into your detection rules. Do you need this column? Is it interesting for you? But even having this like as a recommendation, as a tip, hey, there is something you could do about this amount of data and you could reduce it, that really helps.
Yeah, and I think that's a big point that we'd like to underline here. Don't follow blind the recommendation. Ask yourself, what is the reason? And maybe you should not eliminate the sign-in logs from your Sentinel. It's more about optimizing the numbers of conditional access policies, for example. So that makes absolutely sense. But there's one big other helper when we're calling about Defender, and that's Security Copilot, right?
Yes. I think everybody who has used Sentinel was looking at where is it?
Yeah.
And with a unified portal, now it's there.
Yeah, and Microsoft did a great job in having an embedded experience. So it feels not like a separated portal and you have, once again, an additional window of your browser and you need to navigate to the Copilot. It should be like a good coworker, being on site and giving you some support and some help in a context that you are working on the incident and so on. And what we can see over the last months, especially, was the increasing number of agents, right? And
I think we also had to do something with that.
Yeah.
Or at least our colleagues had.
Yeah, and I think there will be a whole time needed for the webcast to discuss about all the agents that we built here at Clicania. But today we like to focusing on some of the examples, what you can see in any Defender portal when it comes to Copilot. And I think there's no need to show some other beautiful PowerPoint slides. Let's go into a demo, right? So, Fabian, you had this complex incident, right?
Yes.
What happened if I click here on Copilot?
You will get exactly that. You will get a Copilot right onto your screen. And I would recommend personally getting a wide screen at home for that. But we can see we now have this flyout on the right-hand side. We have things like tasks that we can automatically start. We have summaries. And this in particular might be interesting. So management is asking you, hey, can you give me a report about this SAP incident last month? And of course, now you could go in there and do all the haggling yourself. Or you ask your dear friend Copilot, hey, can you do that for me?
Yeah, and I think nobody likes to write long reports. Even we are in an environment where any details and this attack story, as we mentioned before, the correlation engine did a great job. We have here a single incident that explains what happens and all the alerts are part of that one. And with Copilot, we get generated a really great report that gives you a little bit more details about what's going on there. And especially if you like to share that with the management, if you like to share that with, also for the archive, then it is something that you like to see.
And I think this also brings us to a very important thing. Use the comment feature in the incidents, because now in the generating report, it really helps you. So documenting your work inside of this incident is now also part of the end result of this report that we just generated in the last few seconds here.
Right, and let's have a look. So what we have here is an incident summary. That's quite, it looks better than when I started to do some Word document layout. And we got here also, as you can say, as you said before, a lot of details, like what was the classification, what was the investigation actions that has been taken, and for example, if you define some of the follow-up topics, right? So that is one of the scenarios. But what I really love to see here as well is not only the summary about the incident, we have also some suggestion by our friend Copilot when it comes to the triage. So what are the steps that, for example, a security analyst should do in the response to this incident? And we got here kind of a task list, a checklist. What should be some actions, some stuff that should be done by the security analyst. In this case, we have, for example, a user involved into the incident, and we'd like to get into contact with the user. We like to start a containment. And yeah, that really gives you a dynamic, how I can say, the playbook, some advice, what should be in mind for the security analyst. But there's one more. And I really like that, because what we can see from time to time is about threat intelligence reports. So once again, we are back in the story about vulnerabilities that exist in your environment. And vulnerabilities, depending on the industry where your company is working for, or if you have some special CVEs in your environment because you're using particular operating systems versions and so on. And we get here a really nice report about vulnerabilities and about your insights in the environment. And once again, that is perfect for a summary, for a report, if you like to talk to your CISO, if you like to give some presentation to your team lead. And in this case, we get some executive summary, but also some updates from the industry about particular attacks or scenarios that happening outside. And once again, one of the cool things is we get not only references to these information, we get also some relations. So if you have assets or any items in your environment that could be in scope of this particular attack.
So basically, we not only have this Copilot flying into the incident with you, but you also have those agents outside of the built-in experience that bring you a lot of other values like threat intelligence reporting, all that stuff that really takes a lot of time. Those agents can take a bit of time from you and do that for you.
And I think that's just the start. As we have talked about it, we at Glück & Kanja worked on agents. I think there's a lot of invest and focus from Microsoft, and we will see more and more integration and also capabilities by agents. So there will be a lot of great stuff in the future.
Definitely.
All right, Fabian. So we discussed a lot of aspects. What are the benefits about this unified portal? But what is the homework for our audience?
Yeah, I guess everybody in the audience that looked at those benefits that we shown should come to the conclusion, why not? Why didn't I have turned on the unified portal yet in my environment? And I think that is a very good question, and you should change this as soon as you can. So how you can do that? It's super simple. You get this like big banner in your Sentinel if you are not yet migrated, also in the XDR. And in here you can just click on Connect to Workspace. Then you get a list of the workspaces that are available. Choose the one that should be your primary workspace and then click Next. You can change the primary workspace if you selected multiple ones, but always start with the one first. You will see there's a bit of information. Hey, all the alerts will be streamed from XDR to this main primary Sentinel. You will have the ability to do advanced hunting, and also information about what is done in the background. So there is like few applications permissions added to enable the whole thing. And if you are okay with that, you can click on Connect and Connect. Of course, there's two things here. And then it just starts.
Wow,
that's easy.
Super simple.
Yes, it is. And it's also very fast. So the whole connection just takes a few minutes. And after this point, basically all new alerts in Sentinel are also streamed and synchronized into XDR. So it's nothing that works like for previous alerts and incidents. You don't get those, but you will get everything that is coming in starting from that point after you clicked on this Connect button. And if you've done everything right, the next time you open the portal, you will be greeted by, there we go, in the wrong direction. By this nice banner, your unified SIEM and XDR is ready. This means, hey, you connected correctly now. You can go in and then start exploring your data, look at the recommendations Microsoft is giving you. All the good features we talked about today will then be integrated into your unified portal as well.
Wow, that is super simple and straightforward. So yeah, great job and to do it. And I think that's your homework for you guys. And I don't think that's not needed to spend the whole weekend to get it done. But we have seen a lot of good stuff that is coming by this integration. So definitely something you should do as soon as possible if you have not done the job yet done.
Yeah, and it's not only a recommendation, but after July 2026, the experience of Sentinel in the Azure portal will be locked by Microsoft. So it's not something that is optional, but it will be mandatory in the future. And the earlier you begin to explore the new features and start working in the new portal, the better, because it helps you to get accustomed to what is new, where to manage now your Sentinel stuff. And if you feel like it, you still have something to fall back on to until July, Microsoft pulls the plug on the old portal.
But however, I guess we give you some good examples and motivation to do it right now and not waiting that Microsoft is doing it. So yes. With that in mind, yeah, thanks for joining us today. And we hope you have find some good stuff here and you are motivated to start your journey with the unified portal. And with that in mind,
thank you also for me and have a great day.
See ya.